Hello, it's Alex, the Bookubus. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books I read in May, and I had decided to dedicate the month to reading vampire novels, and I had kind of neglected my Vampire Vault vintage vampire book reviews series, so I figured, yeah, why not just devote a whole month to reading some of those and then I'll talk about them all in one go. So I have 6 vampire novels to talk about. 2 of them are YA and the rest are just general adult fiction. One of them was a DNF. Which one was it? You'll have to watch to find out. How exciting! And then there was one other book that was not vampire related, but it was a new release and it was the latest Kathe Koja novel, Dark Factory, so I had to make room for that in my vampire month because there was no way I was going to leave that waiting. So I'll talk about Dark Factory first and then get on to the vampire stuff. So Dark Factory is about 2 main characters. One of them is Ari. He is this very good-looking, charismatic guy who, seems to know everyone, and he is very creative, and he's one of those guys that just, can make things happen. And he works in a nightclub where there is this state-of-the-art kind of virtual reality technology. So if you go out there for a night out, you can kind of pick your level of reality, and yeah, he's one of the people behind the creative side of that. And then we have another character, Max, who is also very creative, but he is much more kind of hands-on, analog, lowbrow, DIY type of person. And so these 2 characters, while they both have creativity and creating immersive experiences for people, they both have that in common, but their personalities and the way that they go about things are very different. But yeah, these 2 characters, their paths cross and they come together, and yeah, there are a bunch of other characters involved, and I will say the characters were quite a lot to keep up with. At first I was having a bit of a hard time, then I got a handle on it and it was fine, and then we got introduced to a bunch more characters, so I will admit I did struggle with keeping up with who was who at times, but I decided to just go with it, so it was fine. And yeah, this one features Kathe Koja's signature stream of consciousness style of writing, which, I guess isn't for everyone, but I enjoy it very much. Overall, I thought this was a really unique and original idea. It did feel a bit maybe cyberpunky in places and a little bit science fiction tinged. It also reminded me a little bit of William Gibson, whose writing I love. Another cool feature about the book is that along with the main story, there are the occasional article and interview with various characters, and it says at the beginning of the book that you can read them as and when you want to, either read them as you hit them or read the novel itself and come back to those at the end. I read them as I went along, and I'm glad I did. I felt like that added to the experience and it helped me get to know these characters a bit better as we were going along. This one is about friendship and rivalry. It's about love and found family, art, of course, and creativity. Also kind of industry and commercialism versus art and creativity and integrity. So yeah, I think it had some interesting themes. It had some really interesting characters. I will say a lot of them aren't necessarily likeable characters, but that's usually the case with her work. That doesn't mean to say they're not interesting to read about. And there's also a website where you can go and delve into a whole bunch more stuff related to Dark Factory. So yeah, a really cool and interesting concept. So overall, I thought this one was excellent and I rated it 4 stars. Okay, so now from here on out, we're talking vampire books. And I'm just gonna go in the order I read them. Most of them I really enjoyed, spoiler alert. And first up was Necroscope by Brian Lumley, which was originally published in 1986. So this one was different to what I expected, although I'm not entirely sure what I was expecting, I guess. But this one, it does have a vampire element, but I'm not sure I would say it is like the main focus of the story. It is in a sense, but it also isn't as well, because there's a lot of other stuff going on too. But the kind of general gist of the story is that there is a kind of little known branch of the government in the UK where they deal with like ESP related stuff, like the weird stuff. And so they have people on their team who are, you know, telepathic and have various other weird skills that could potentially be helpful in a political environment. And yeah, not only does the UK have this, but also Russia does as well. And so the two main countries that we're dealing with are the UK and Russia, and we are following the various people in these branches, and they call themselves, like, they put the ESP in espionage, which I thought was really cool and basically describes it in a nutshell pretty well. So on the Russian side, we have a character called Boris, and he is a necromancer, which means he can basically glean information from dead bodies. And on the UK side, we have Harry, who is a necroscope, which is an altogether different beast. And that means he can talk to dead people. So not just being able to get kind of certain information from them, he can actually have conversations with them. So back to Boris. The other thing that he's got going on is the vampire element of the story. And I really liked this vampire. He was super cool, definitely like a great villain. And he had many years ago been chained underground in a forest. Anyway, he and Boris, through reasons, meet each other and yeah, build up a rapport over time. And obviously I'm not going to say where that goes, but yeah, the vampire element of the story was definitely my favourite part. I really enjoyed seeing that part of the story play out. It was just great. The other main part of the story is following Harry. So we first kind of meet him as a kid, and we follow him at various points in his life as he is discovering this talent that he has and this ability to talk to dead people. And then eventually, when this espionage branch kind of discovers him and wants to recruit him. So I think that's all I'm going to say about the plot. It is a bit of a slower kind of story, not even like a slow burn. It was just kind of slow paced, really. And not only that, but quite long-winded. Like sometimes things just went on for a lot longer than they probably needed to. So yeah, it's a bit wordy at times. I wouldn't say it was boring though. Just occasionally I was like, okay, let's get to it, get to the point, you know. I think the main thing that let this one down a little bit for me, and I won't go into any specifics and spoil it for you, but there is something that happens that is just a little bit kind of like, oh, we're gonna, you know, make this convenient thing happen so things fall into place, okay. Which, yeah, just kind of was a bit like disappointing that it played out that way, but otherwise I did still really enjoy it. And yeah, I would definitely be interested in reading more of the Necroscope series. I don't think I'm going to be picking it up like tomorrow or anything, but yeah, one of these days I would definitely continue. So Necroscope was great, but more of your slower paced kind of story. But yeah, a very awesome vampire element. So I gave this one 4 stars. Next up, I read Live Girls by Ray Garton, which was originally published in 1987. And this was a buddy read with the lovely One over at Plagued by Visions, and we had a great old time reading this one together. So this one is a bit more splatterpunky, and you know, gotta love a bit of that. So this one is set in New York City. It's, you know, it's 42nd Street, it's strip clubs, it's seedy, it's sleazy, it's gritty, it's grimy, it's all of that good stuff. And we're following a guy called Davey, and things aren't going too well for him. His girlfriend has left, and yeah, things at his place of work aren't going too well either. And one day, just on a whim, he goes into this sex club. It's called Live Girls, and he has quite the experience in there. And he meets this very lovely lady who is working in the peep show booth. She gives him a little bit more than just the peep show, I'll tell you that much. So yeah, this one is definitely a bit more trashy, but good trashy, you know, well written, very compelling, and yeah, a bit more sex and a bit more, you know, blood and gore thrown in there as well. So really enjoyed it. I liked the character of Davey, and there's another character that gets involved as well who was really good too. And then there's a co-worker of Davey's, I think her name was Casey, and she was awesome. I really liked her. She was, yeah, very interesting for the time this book came out, and written by a man. She was just super cool. She wasn't going to take any shit from anyone. She was awesome. I liked her a lot. And yeah, the vampire is an interesting one here. She's, yeah, this beautiful woman, and yeah, there's some other vampire stuff going on too, which I won't go and spoil the details of. Another cool thing I enjoyed was there's a nightclub that's part of the story, and so the scenes in there I just thought were really cool, very 80s. There was some like crazy like dance scene at some point involving a crucifix, which was just kind of wild and brilliant. I loved it. And yeah, this was, I don't know if I have as much to say about it because it is a bit shorter, but yeah, it was a very quick read. I think towards the end it maybe didn't sustain like how strong it had been for the first part of the book. I think it did kind of lose a little bit towards the end, but overall it was still a really great read, very enjoyable. This is also a series, so yeah, I wouldn't say no to carrying on with this one as well at some point. But yes, this was another 4-star read. It was great. Next up, I read This Dark Paradise by Wendy Haley, which was originally published in 1994. And this one has a cover and step back art that made me think of V.C. Andrews, and the synopsis as well also made me think this might be something like V.C. Andrews but with vampires. And yeah, it was a little bit. So this is about a very wealthy family called the Danilovs in Georgia, and they've been in this very fancy mansion for many generations. And we are following Alex, great name, Danilov, who is a vampire and is many years old. And he is returning to the family home after a period away. And one of the family members there knows that he is a vampire, but no one else does. So we have Baron and his wife Sonia and their son. And then we have Lydia, who is the sister of Baron. And yeah, both Sonia and Lydia kind of throw themselves at Alex, you know, which was just all a bit weird, but okay. And Baron immediately hates Alex. So there's this jealousy and rivalry going on between them two from the get-go. So yeah, this one was very much kind of family, soap opera, melodrama. which, you know, isn't normally my kind of go-to thing, but I did think this was very well done. The vampire element in this one is a little bit more sedate maybe than some others, mainly because Alex tries not to actually kill anyone. He's kind of, you know, sworn to himself to not do that. Occasionally, very occasionally, he will actually bite someone and take some blood, but he doesn't want to kill anyone. So yeah, there's not much blood going on, unfortunately. But there is a villain that comes along. So this villain character, of course, isn't afraid to get some bloodshed going. And yeah, another element of the story, there's kind of a bit of a maybe supernatural element involving crystals. And then there's also a bit of a kind of demonic element as well. So yeah, it had a few interesting things going on. I think when she was getting into those more like horror type of scenes, they were really great. The rest of the book, yeah, like I say, it was more kind of family drama stuff, which wasn't as interesting to me, but it was still a pretty good read. You know, I think for what it was well done. I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars, and I believe there is a second part to this, but I don't think the series went on any further than that. So honestly, I probably wouldn't be rushing out to grab this one, but yeah, like I say, it was still a good read, so if it sounds interesting to you, then I would definitely still recommend it. Then I read Mina and the Undead by Amy McCaw. This is the only one that is not vintage. This one came out just last year in 2021, and Amy does have a booktube channel, so I will leave that linked below. You should definitely go check her out if you haven't already. So this is one of the young adult books that I read, and this one is set in New Orleans, and we're following a character called Mina, who is a teenage girl who has travelled over from the UK to meet up with her sister, and they have a little bit of a rocky history, which we learn a bit more about as the story goes on. And her sister Libby has been working at this kind of haunted house type horror attraction in the city. So yeah, that ends up being one of the big components of the story. And yeah, there's a lot of horror elements and horror references and stuff. Definitely things like Interview with the Vampire, with the whole vampires and New Orleans thing. And with it being a YA novel, of course, there was a bit of romance. There is a love interest for Mina, and yeah, I won't go into any spoilers, but I thought it was really well done. You know, stuff like that can be a bit hit or miss for me, but I really liked this one. So the main element of this one, other than vampires, is there's kind of a mystery to the story. There are some murders taking place in the city, which Mina, her sister and friends end up getting caught up in. And so, yeah, it's a case of figuring out who's behind it before more people get killed, including themselves. I thought the mystery aspect worked really, really well. It really kept me turning those pages. I just needed to know what was going to happen next. And also, I forgot to mention, but it's, even though it only came out last year, it's set in the 90s. I think it's 1995. So there's also a lot of 90s pop culture references to really kind of set the scene, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, this was just a really good time. It was really fun. Regina and I both enjoyed it. We had a really good time reading it together. Amy did an excellent job with this one. This one also has a sequel, which I think just came out or is coming out soon this year, so that's very exciting. I would definitely be interested to see what happens in the sequel. So yeah, if you're looking for a YA vampire story that has that kind of nostalgic 90s vibe as well, definitely recommend this one. I rated it 4 stars. Next up was The Vampire Memoirs by Mera. It is specified how that's pronounced in the book. Mera McCuniff and Traci Briery. This was originally published in 1991. So this is about Mera, who is a vampire. This is her life story told over the 1,000+ years that she has been around. And yeah, I was really looking forward to this one, but unfortunately this was the one I DNF'd. It just didn't grab me at all. I just didn't find it interesting, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't like to say a book was boring, but it really didn't grab me at any point. And I did give it a go. I gave it a solid go. I read a good chunk of it and it still hadn't grabbed me at any point. Like, not really much had happened. It felt very long-winded and drawn out. And yeah, the character, yeah, didn't really interest me, unfortunately. I did want to give it more of a chance, but I didn't want to kind of waste my time with it. So I did like skim read the rest of it, which is not something I do at all. I would normally just DNF it, but I did want to give this one another chance. So I kind of skimmed through the rest of it just to see if any other part kind of piqued my interest, but sadly it did not. So yeah, this was a DNF for me. It's not one I would recommend. They can't all be winners, unfortunately. So sadly, this was the one that I didn't enjoy out of this whole stack of books. But anyway, so moving on to the last book, which is The Last Vampire by Christopher Pike. And this was originally published in 1994. And this is a YA title, and this is about a vampire called Elisa. She looks like just maybe your average blonde-haired 18-year-old girl, but she's actually much, much older than that, and she's like a complete badass vampire. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. It hooked me in right from the get-go. I really enjoyed reading from Elisa's perspective. And yeah, one of the things I really like about Christopher Pike's books, they definitely feel a bit more adult than some YA does, especially from that period of the 90s. So we have, you know, people getting killed. We've got, you know, some other adult themes, you know, sex and drugs, that kind of thing are mentioned. So yeah, it always felt like these were a bit more edgy. And yeah, reading this one for the first time as an adult, I really enjoyed it. Another interesting element about this one, as we learn about Elisa's life over the many, many years that she has been a vampire, it goes into Hinduism, and I really enjoyed that stuff. I'm not a religious person, so reading that kind of thing can be a bit hit or miss for me, but I thought this was really great and worked really well for the story as well. So that was really cool. And yeah, basically Elisa thinks she is the last vampire. But yeah, it seems there's someone trying to track her down. Who could it be? So yeah, I just really liked her voice. She's a very interesting character, and yeah, her kind of morals and the way she deals with being a vampire are pretty interesting. There are some really great action scenes in here, but then also some really great quiet moments, quiet scenes where she's like reflecting on certain things. Yeah, this was just a really interesting one. Like, it wasn't at all what I expected from it, but in a good way. I really, really enjoyed it. This was another excellent one, another 4-star read, and also it's another one that is the first in a series. So yeah, another series that I'll have to continue with at some point. So that was my May reading wrap up, mostly vampire themed, and they were mostly 4-star reads, which is excellent. So it was a really good month. One thing I was really happy with is that there was a really good variety of vampires here. I'm always impressed when vampire novels can be so different to each other. Like, yeah, authors are just still so creative in thinking of new ways to kind of interpret the idea of a vampire. So yeah, that's always really cool. And yeah, these were all awesome. I would definitely recommend them, apart from the one I DNF'd, basically. But yeah, I guess that is it. So do let me know if you've read any of these, because I would really love to hear your thoughts on them, whether you agreed or disagreed with me. And if you've read any more of any of these vampire series, you'll have to let me know your thoughts on them, if you recommend them or not. Yeah, I'll have to figure out which one of them I'm going to choose to move on to book 2 with sooner rather than later. And if you have any other vampire recommendations, feel free to let me know, because I'm always down for reading about vampires. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video.